StrateGene. I'm presuming you all have StrateGene in hand, or you have ordered the genetic test, the kit, and you are about to spit in it or swab your cheek and send it in. And so that's all good. So my goal here today is to have, I'm assuming you have StrateGene results in front of you. And if you don't, well, they'll be coming soon, and you're going to have some additional learning materials as well. Okay. So let's get to the guide here. So what is StrateGene? Ultimately, a lot of people think StrateGene is just a genetic test, right? And that is not what StrateGene just is. I mean, you can order 23andMe, that's a genetic test. Ancestry, that's an ancestry test. It's fun for the family, but StrateGene is way more than a genetic test. What it is, it's personalized precision medicine. And I shudder a little bit with the term medicine, but ultimately, when you are seeking health or seeking the support from a health professional, right, you're under the guise of medicine of some regard. So how many of you have gone to health professionals in the past and they have protocols for things? They say, okay, yeah, I've treated gout, or yes, I treated autoimmune disease, specifically Hashimoto's or rheumatoid, and I've got this great protocol that works for a lot of my patients. Or, I'm a fitness trainer and I've got this great program for you. Well, what you're hearing is I have a program that works for this condition, this thing, and it is not taking you into account. And you have to take you into account. And what StrateGene does is you can support yourself, and you can support yourself immensely with your health professional with the tool of StrateGene. Because if your health professional has a system in place for fibromyalgia or rheumatoid arthritis or what have you, and their system is working well for 80% of their patients, and you come in thinking, wow, that's a great, that's going to do well for me. And then you start following their quote unquote protocol, but you start having not success. It's starting to fail. So what do? Well, if you bring in your StrateGene and you look at your genetics, and your health professional understands how to utilize StrateGene alongside their usual protocol, but can tweak it and modify it for you, that's precision. And that's what StrateGene provides. So dirty genes, you've heard me talk about this probably too. You're bored, right? But we have to drive this home, because when you get StrateGene in front of you, you blow all that out the window. You just like gone, and you quickly look what genetic variants you have, and you think, okay, now I've got this mutation here and this mutation here, and oh crap, I've got this one and that one. Oh, good, I don't have one here. But no, slow down. Okay, you gotta remember the basics, and the basics are dirty genes. And dirty genes are genes that are heavily influenced by lifestyle, environment, or all genes, and they're not performing at their best. So I gave an example the other day that talked about genes and what they do. And I equated genes as to an employee within your body. And if you provide your employee the right tools, the best computers, comfortable working environment, you're not pinging them at 10 o'clock at night or on weekends when they're trying to rest. When they come into work, they're going to be able to perform. And you have about 18,000 genes in your human body, 18,000. So you have 18,000 employees in your human body, and you've never met them. You have them. You didn't even go out and hire them. You just inherited 18,000 employees, and you have no idea what they're doing. And so my job is to guide you what these 18,000 employees of yours are doing and how you can best treat them. And if you are providing them toxin, stress, poor diet, lack of exercise, or an excessive amount of exercise, or you have chronic persistent infections, or your gut microbiome is a mess because you were put on antibiotics early on as a kid, or your mom was given IV antibiotics or oral antibiotics during pregnancy, and you've inherited her dirty microbiome, and you've been struggling ever since. So it can start in the womb. And so dirty genes start in the womb, and these influence how your genes function. They either slow your gene down or they speed it up. And this premise, this concept is so, so important for you to understand, because what StrateGene does is it visually presents itself right in front of you. And so I know a lot of you get your StrateGene and you get overwhelmed from seeing these diagrams, but you just have to understand that all we're doing is we're taking this model, which you're seeing in front of you, of how genes are influenced by all these things, which is affecting their genetic expression, right? So just remember that. And we're just duplicating this model over and over again, and we're organizing it for you. And when you have dirty genes, those are symptoms. And if you are getting symptoms, that is a sign that some genes are overperforming or underperforming. And right now, you have no idea which genes are doing that, and you have no idea how to support them. StrateGene unveils that for you, and it unveils it for the health professional too, so the guesswork goes way down. And when you're working with your health professional and you bring in your StrateGene report, it is not showing you real-time information. It is showing you which genes you're born with, which employees you have hired for the first time. You're able to see what your employees are, right? And know their weaknesses and their strengths. But you need to work with your doctor and tie in your signs and symptoms and lab values and markers along with your StrateGene report. And when you do that, it's extremely, extremely powerful. So within the back end of StrateGene.me, I really encourage you to log in and go to the education center. If you go there, you're going to see, some really good information for you. And so if you've spit in the collection tube or swabbed your cheek and you're waiting for your results, what I want you to do is go to StrateGene.me, log in, and do the Dirty Genes course. That's first. Do the Dirty Genes course. It's really great. It's an extension of the book. I'm not discussing the book. It's an extension of the book. You're getting information in the Dirty Genes course that I did not include in the book at all. And why didn't I include it in the book? It's too scientific. My publisher rightly said to not include this crazy scientific information in the book. It's too much, and the book would have been too big. So you are getting more information from the Dirty Genes course, and Dirty Genes book is really useful in that it gives you a great starting point, and the Dirty Genes course gives you a great starting point as well. It just extends it. So go and log in to the StrateGene.me. So what does StrateGene provide you? Okay, this course, Michelle, comes along with the book, the test. So when you order StrateGene, the test kit, you are getting a copy of the book, Dirty Genes. You are getting the course of Dirty Genes, and you are getting a flurry of other videos as well. And you're getting a back end to the education center, which is probably where this video will also live. And you are going to be getting other sequential videos because I'm going to be discussing pathways and specific other things along, and they're going to be building sequentially in difficulty, and you're going to be increasing your awareness and understanding of StrateGene that way. So keep checking in the StrateGene backend, but we'll also be emailing you a copy. So here's basically a summary slide of StrateGene compared to other genetic reports. A lot of people ask me, how does StrateGene compare to 23andMe or DNA Fit or all these other ones? And I, first of all, I made StrateGene with an amazing team, not myself. And this is years and years of research. And we made StrateGene because what you have out there currently isn't working. The genetic reports that you are getting are not looking at it from a holistic point of view. And they're not showing you the gene-to-gene interaction. They're not providing you what SNPs are ultimately doing, making your genes working faster or slower. And they don't give you pathways which show how the genes are interacting with each other and what nutrients they need together. And if one gene is working, how's it going to impact the gene down below that, right? That's important to know. And a lot of you are diagnosed from your doctor, and the doctors identified the MTHFR gene variant. And what do? They whip out methylfolate and they give you methylfolate. But the doctor is not understanding the consequences of that because they're looking at MTHFR in isolation. They're not looking at the MTR, MTRR, CBS, and all these other things in the bioctin pathway. Or maybe you have high histamine and doctors say, oh, you're undermethylated. So I'm going to support your histamine metabolism and we're going to give you SAMe. Some patients do amazing, some do terribly. Well, StrateGene shows that. All these other genetic reports, they'll just show a SNP in isolation and they'll say support it with this nutrient or this lifestyle effect. And it doesn't really work. You might get somewhere, but you're going to be banging your head against the wall because you don't have the whole picture. So, now you can finally have the whole picture. And I also equate StrateGene as to me providing you an amazing instrument. Maybe you bought a piano or a saxophone or a guitar, and you got it for Christmas. Somebody bought you a piano or some type of musical instrument for Christmas, and they've given it to you, and you're all excited, and you pick it up. Oh my God! You start playing it, they all walk out of the room. Okay, you suck. Well, StrateGene, at first, you're going to suck, but you keep playing, you keep learning, you keep listening to these webinars, attending and asking your questions, and you're going to be getting it, and you're going to become better and better and more proficient at playing with your StrateGene, and you will be playing with it. So let's tie StrateGene in with the Super 7, because StrateGene was designed to accompany the book Dirty Genes, to give you an understanding of how your Super 7 genes are actually hired, right? So you have an employee in your body, and you have 7 different employees. You have the MTHFR employee, you've got the DAO employee, and you're going to meet them for the first time in your life right now. We all have 18,000 employees. You just don't know if they're faster or slower than someone else's employees. Every company has different employees within their business. And different employees do different things well, and some employees do other things not so well. And so you have to find their strengths and weaknesses in order to optimize their performance. You know yourself that there are some things that you cook in the kitchen amazingly well, and you will cook those things. And you also know some things that you cook in the kitchen, no matter how hard you try, they just taste terrible, or that doesn't work out, or the presentation is terrible. So you've learned, if you have a party, you're not going to cook that stuff. You're done. So with StrateGene, when you identify where you're susceptible, you need to pay more attention there and support it. And where you have strong genes that are stronger, you can probably put a little bit more load on them, and they're not going to scream signs and symptoms. Because remember, a dirty gene is going to start screaming symptoms at you. Okay. Do we provide recommendations based upon the results? We have lots of recommendations, and you'll see, yes. But the recommendations vary, and the recommendations are not one and done. A lot of you, it's a great question, SJ. So I'm going to pause here for a second. A health professional emailed me the other day in kind of panic mode. And she said, oh my gosh, I've ordered 30 StrateGenes for my patients, and this is crazy. I'm in information overload. These reports are over 120 pages long, and I how am I supposed to go over their entire report with them in one sitting? And so this also goes to you. When you receive your StrateGene report, your first gut instinct, as it should be, is to look at everything, try to digest it all, and read all of it. But it's not that way. It's just that Dirty Genes book is also not that way. Dirty Genes book is not a book that you pick up and read from start to finish, and then you put it away and you're done. Dirty Genes is a book that's a guidebook that you'll continually reference your entire rest of your life. StrateGene is an extension of that book, a major extension of that book, and you're going to be referencing your StrateGene results constantly throughout the rest of your life. It is a lifelong tool. There is no need, and I repeat, there is no need for you to read, and there's no point for you to read your entire 120-page report when you get it. What you need to do is you need to put it in alignment with how you're feeling and in alignment with your book. You put them together. And when you do that, it works really well. So let me give you some examples. So in the book, these are the genes that we discussed, right? And this is why we give you the book. So we literally give you the book, and we literally give you the Dirty Genes course and other things. We do not charge for them. They're not built into the price. They're gifts on our side. Okay. So StrateGene would not be priced lower if we did not give you the book or the course. They are legit gifts. So these are the genes that are discussed in the book, and there are strengths and weaknesses. So for all employees, like we said, all employees have strengths and weaknesses. You, as an individual, have strengths and weaknesses, and your genes, as individuals themselves, also have strengths and weaknesses. So when you look at your genetic report, your StrateGene results come in, and you see your MTHFR, you don't panic. You have an employee in the MTHFR department. They're there. They sit there at their desk every day diligently, and they always show up for work. Always. They're not going to walk out on you. The question is, how do you need to support them best? Do they have a bad back? Are they more sensitive to screens? And so you need to get something for their screen? Do you need to set up their desk a different way? Right? Are they colder? So you need to warm up the room more for them to function better, right? So when you understand how your MTHFR employee is designed and built, you just tweak their environment better to make them perform better. So StrateGene DNA test is not looking for things, and it's not going to say, oh, you're a mutant. You're broken here. You're in trouble. No. It's going to inform you that, you need to pay more attention here. But there's also strengths with having some weaknesses. Okay. So interesting statement. Let's walk through these. MTHFR, strengths and weaknesses here. These are all discussed in the book as well. So, and MTHFR's job is to produce methylfolate. That's its job. Okay. That's what it does. And so how do you make it support that? So MTHFR is down here in the folate pathway. So this is the folate pathway that you get with your StrateGene report or your StrateGene test. And if you have not yet bought the new genetic test from StrateGene, then the pathways that you are seeing in front of you right now on your screen are different. And you might be on the fence whether or not you do the new StrateGene genetic test. And I invite you to make that plunge because it is vastly superior. I mean, you're going to see how much better it is. There's no comparison. And so what you're seeing here with MTHFR is you see this. Sorry, I got this thing keep showing up on my screen. See, the red star is that there's a speed bar there, and that is specifying that your MTHFR gene is functioning a bit slower than what's typical in the environment. And that's not a bad thing. That's just different. You have a different MTHFR gene than what is mostly found in the population, and that is okay. The important thing is you know that. COMT, amazing gene, super, super important. All the super 7 are super important. That's why they're discussed. Strengths and weaknesses here as well. Okay. So you've got to understand that you are tying your Dirty Genes book in with your StrateGene report. You're going to bring it over. And so when you do the Dirty Genes quizzes in the book, the laundry list 1 and 2. So again, you get the book with the test. You got to use it. You got to read it. Do the quizzes, and you're going to find out, wow, okay, my COMT gene, it's super slow. I mean, it's a dog. And then you do your genetic test and you find out, well, gosh, genetically, I actually am quite slow here. And so epigenetically, your COMT gene is slower because you just checked boxes in your book in the laundry list 1 and 2 that are stating that you do have a slower COMT, and that is an epigenetic influence because maybe you're following the GAPS diet or the paleo diet and you're consuming a huge amount of protein. Maybe you're magnesium deficient, right? So a lot of these things you can start bringing to the table and applying. So you're going to be using your Dirty Genes laundry list in association with your findings of the test. Let me grab a book here. I've got it around somewhere in my office. Okay. So the laundry list. So forget what page it's on. There's laundry list 1 and 2, and laundry list 2 is more thorough. I should have just looked in the table of contents. I thought I would find it real fast. There it is. Okay. Okay. That's what I want you finding. So I want you to go to this chapter, and I want you to go through these quizzes, all of them. Answer all these questions. And for MCFR, right? At times I get exercise-induced asthma. My moods often fluctuate between irritability and depression. I feel generally tired and toxic. I don't eat leafy green veggies every day. I have difficulty falling asleep at night. I have laughing gas at the dentist, and it made me feel horrible. So, in DAO, I can't tolerate yogurt, kefir, chocolate, alcohol, citrus, fish, wine. So you're going to be answering these questions. When you answer these questions, you're going to then pull and open up your StrateGene report, and you're going to look at the genetics of these, how you're born with them. This is showing how your gene is real time. And then you're going to look at how you've inherited that particular gene. DAO, amazing strengths and weaknesses for this too. If you think about this for a second, if the job for DAO is to process histamine, and histamine, if it's too high, is going to give you a histamine reaction. And if it's in your gut, then this could also trigger leaky gut. But at the same time, it's going to move your stool faster. So you're going to have a very strong bowel movement, eliminate it. And you're going to be very sensitive to that food. Back in the old days, if you ate a food that was rotten before, maybe our cave person ancestors, and you ate these things and your histamine level shot up and you took a bite of something and you're like, oh my gosh, that's bad. And then you had explosive diarrhea, you eliminated the pathogen, and you've sensed that food is rotten. So having a slower DAO is identifying foods for you that may have saved your life. So there's strengths and reasons why we pass this down. Okay. And so, but weaknesses in the modern day, we don't really have those types of foods anymore, unless you just forgot they're in their fridge and decided to take a bite the other day, or your microbiome was worse and imbalanced. So, but understand the strengths and weaknesses of these things. And here's your DAO enzyme here. So Connie asked in her original report, her CMT was slow. In the updated report, it's complicated. So you need to click it, Connie, and read about what the notable variations are there. It can change. So we now have haplotype for CMT, and my team is actually reviewing the haplotype right now. And but the haplotype is more accurate. In the old StrateGene, we just looked at one CMT variant itself. In the new StrateGene, we look at 4. Okay. Maui, this gene, as you learned in the book Dirty Genes, again, you got to use StrateGene with your book. It processes dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. And so when you look at this, and it's also supporting histamine metabolism. And so strengths and weaknesses with this also. So if your Maui gene is working slower, it could be beneficial because it keeps your serotonin levels up higher and you have an enhanced mood and focus. But if it's too high, then that's going to be problematic. And if it's too low, that'll be problematic. So you need to always balance it. And when you combine your book with the test, it's going to be providing you some great insights. So Maui is found in multiple places on your StrateGene report. It is found on your dopamine pathway. It's found in your serotonin pathway, and it's found in your histamine pathway, 3 areas. And this is a very good thing to understand, that another reason why you cannot just look at SNPs in isolation. Look, many of you have ordered reports in the past, and it shows that your Maui gene, you have a variant there. If you do a typical genetic test and it just says that you have a Maui variant and it's red, you're going to think that it's broken. And you're going to think, okay, that's not good. I have a broken Maui gene. What do I need to support that? And your doctor is going to say, most likely take riboflavin or take 5-HTP. But you don't have it in context with how that gene is working with all the other ones. I mean, look at how Maui is interacting here with ALDH2 and COMT and your PNMT genes and your other COMT gene. So you can see how this Maui gene is interacting with all these other genes here. So if you just support your Maui gene right here, and you just say, okay, I have Maui and I'm going to supplement riboflavin because that's the cofactor, then look, you make dopal, and now the dopal builds up and you can see it's red. That can lead to oxidative stress in your brain. And especially if this gene here is slow, ALDH2. And yes, you've inherited a slower ALDH2 gene. And so again, if you just look, and I'll get this level of detail in further webinars, but I just want to show you this is why StrateGene is so much more powerful, because you're going to understand the bigger picture. At first, it's more difficult, but in the end, you're going to get much better results because you're going to understand the gene-to-gene interactions. You cannot just know that you have a SNP in Maui if you're homozygous for Maui. What does that even mean for you? So first, you can at a glance tell by looking at the speed indicators here if it's faster or slower. So that's what we've changed in the new StrateGene. So here, tyrosine hydroxylase gene, this person has a faster ability to convert tyrosine into L-DOPA genetically, but epigenetically, it's influenced by other things. But I'm getting ahead of myself. But I just want to emphasize that it's important for you to understand the value of your StrateGene. Even though you don't understand it right now, you will. And the value is you're going to be seeing the interactions of how your Maui works with other genes. And it's going to be way, way more powerful for you. So the glutathione genes from the book, right? So we discussed both. I was trying to write the book on glutathione, and I was writing only on GST or GPX. I can't remember which one. And I kept confusing myself while writing the book. I couldn't write the chapter without including the other glutathione gene as well. So we have both GST, GPX genes written in the book, and they have different jobs. And again, there are strengths and weaknesses to having these slower or faster. And it's important that you know these things. And so here is where this lives in the glutathione pathway. And we expanded the glutathione pathway for you in the new StrateGene. And we also included the speedometer arrows. And here, this individual's glutathione peroxidase 1, GPX1, is slower. So they have a reduced ability genetically to convert hydrogen peroxide to water. Genetically, not epigenetically. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. And the glutathione peroxidase 4 and the glutathione family of genes, these, when you see these hashed lines of purple and orange, that means it's complicated. And it's literally complicated. And this is, again, another benefit of StrateGene, is we do not oversimplify the findings or the human body in order to reduce your frustration, in order to reduce your sense of overwhelm, because I'm sorry, that's how the human body works. If you're ordering a genetic test to learn how your body is working, and specifically how certain genes are functioning, then you need to know all the detail that is with that. We cannot be patronizing you and saying, oh, okay, we're just going to oversimplify this. And if you inherit a slower glutathione family set of genes, then your mercury levels are going to be higher. And that's it. And then we freak you out that your mercury levels are higher, and you chelate, and you supplement some glutathione and sauna every single day of your life. No. And the reason it's complicated, and you will see when you click on the glutathione peroxidase, or if you click on these things, it will expand and will give you more information on action to learn from it. So again, we could patronize you and we can oversimplify it. Or we can give you the solid research and the evidence that we have found, and we try to take that science speak from all the research papers and put it in digestible language for you that you can understand without being patronizing. I can't stand it when someone assumes that I'm too stupid to learn something complex. You are not too stupid to learn something complex. And the fact that you're here right now listening shows that you're driven and you're motivated and you want to learn. And that's exactly who StrateGene was built for people like you. So I thank you for being here, and I thank you for utilizing this tool, because you're one of the few that are doing it right. NOS3 is an extremely important gene. And every one of the genes that are in dirty genes are extremely important. And so we have a dedicated pathway in the StrateGene report, the dirty genes pathway. And so when you open up your StrateGene, and I'll show it to you in a second, well, in a few minutes, you're going to see all your Super 7 genes. And that's really important to know, because it gives you a quick glance and it'll help tie the book in. Okay. So again, you're going to be doing your laundry list 2 quizzes, and you're going to find out which genes are the dirtiest, and then you're going to be using your StrateGene to help guide you as well. So nitric oxide synthase 3, this gene produces nitric oxide in your blood vessels. And if you have cold hands right now, feel your hands. Are they cold? Tune in for a second to your hands. Mine are cool. They're not cold, but they're cool. And my feet are pretty warm. So if you have cold hands and feet, you have a dirty NOS3. That's simple. And genetically, you could have the most beautiful NOS3 gene in the world. It could be the best NOS3 gene ever inherited by anybody on the planet, but you can still have cold hands and feet. Why? Because of lifestyle, environment, food, and supplements. And this is also why StrateGene is light years ahead of all these other genetic reports, and it's why we made it. Because if you do a genetic test and we give you a little clap and say you have a beautiful MTHFR gene, there's no genetic variance in there, you have a false sense of security that your MTHFR gene or your NOS3 gene, if it doesn't have any variance, you think that you're fine, right? Who's with me on that? Who thinks that if you do a genetic report and you don't have a genetic variant in your MTHFR gene, you're like, damn, I swore I had a mutation or a SNP in that certain gene that you had. Maybe you swore you had it in your DAO gene or one of the Super 7, and you're actually upset that you didn't have a variant in that gene. But what you need to understand, you need to pull back a second, and you're like, oh, if I didn't have a variant in that particular gene, that means that I'm doing something in my life that's making it really dirty, or I inherited it dirty from my mom and my dad. Even though it's not genetically dirty, it's epigenetically dirty through lifestyle, food, the environment, medications, or maybe I'm even supplementing incorrectly, right? So again, the beauty of StrateGene when you utilize it properly. And NOS3, this is a new pathway which we drew for StrateGene. In fact, the dopamine pathway was brand new too. So some of you who are using the old StrateGene reports and you're looking at these new pathways, you're like, wow, these are quite a bit different and way more expanded. Yes, because we've learned a lot since. So we're learning right along with you. We're a bit ahead of you, granted, but our job is to teach you and bring you up to speed. So you can see NOS3 down here. And it is complicated. And so it depends. And it's important that you understand when it depends, if it's working faster or slower. And so we give you some insights behind that. Ruth, what can you do for cold hands and feet? Read dirty genes. Read dirty genes. But in short, breathe through your nose. That's my number one recommendation. Change your breathing. Improve your breathing. We do not take for granted something that happens automatically for us every single day. And that's breathing and our heart beating, and our ability to just get up and walk. Some things are amazing and we just take it for granted. Breathing is one of those. It just happens. But I guarantee you, many of you right now are not breathing properly. I'm not, because I'm talking a lot. And if I'm talking a lot, I'm not getting those slow in and slow out breaths and breathing through my mouth. I'm actually more likely breathing through my mouth right now instead of my nose. You should be breathing through your nose, not your mouth. And we talk about that in your report. So if you find out in your laundry list in the book, Dirty Genes, that you do have cold hands and feet, because that's one of the questions in the laundry list. I have cold hands and feet. And if you check that box, that's one thing that is a sign that your NOS3 is dirty. And when you read how to clean it it's going to say breathe through your nose. And on your genetic report, your StrateGene report, we also say breathe through your nose. PEMT. Wow, this gene is so under-recognized, and it's extremely important for pregnancy, breastfeeding, and life in general. Every single one of our cells on our body, and we're made up of, I don't even know how many cells. Tom brought me into that question. A lot. And every single one of your cells has a cell membrane around it. And you are producing heaps and heaps amounts of phosphatidylcholine. And this gene helps support that production of that. And to give you an example, in your laundry list for your PEMT gene, if you're struggling with SIBO or gallbladder issues, or you've had your gallbladder removed, or you had gallbladder problems during pregnancy, these are all things that are associated, or clogged milk ducts. These are all associated with phosphatidylcholine. And it's not the primary cause, but it's a big one. If your gallbladder is low in phosphatidylcholine, the bile is not slippery. It doesn't slip out into your small intestine and digest fats for you, or slip out of your bile duct into your small intestine and kill the bacteria to keep the bacteria in check. And so then you get small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, because bile in and of itself is antimicrobial. So PEMT is an extremely important gene for every single one of your cells, and for your gallbladder and your digestion and nutrient absorption. It's just grossly underrated. And so here it is on the pathway. And so this is a new methionine cycle pathway. And every time I look at this, I think of that crazy South Park show. I think I've seen that a couple of times, but doesn't it look like that guy's head on South Park? I think it's The Right Thing, or Family Guy. I don't watch shows much. I think it's Family Guy who has this weird looking head.
It's Cartman on South Park.
Yeah, so there we go. Yeah, thanks, Tom. But yeah, that's who your methylation cycle looks like. But he's a smart guy, at least. So PEMT, here it is. And so when you see an info on your StrateGene report, that means that it's been tested genetically, and there's been no findings, and no genetic variants identified. But we also wanted to include some information on this gene for you, because there's a lot of information published in the research, and we wanted to give you some information on how this particular gene works and how you can clean it up and how it gets dirty. So here's your PEMT, and you can see the note right here. Okay, SAMe is your body's primary methyl donor, and your body's primary methyl donor primarily goes to these two genes. Look at this. These two genes use 80% of your methylation. Two genes use 80% of your body's methylation, the PEMT gene and the GEMT gene. So you can imagine how important creatine is, and you can imagine how important phosphatidylcholine is in your human body. So if your body is using something, it's such a high degree, that means it's a great importance. It's going to be utilizing a lot of resources, and resources are hard to come by, but it needs to do it because it knows how important it is. So we've evolved with the understanding that, wow, these two nutrients are really important. And if you're not getting them in your diet or supplementation, your body's going to make them for you. So vegans and vegetarians, hear me on this. Phosphatidylcholine and creatine, extremely important for you, because you might not be getting sufficient levels, especially when pregnant or breastfeeding. But the book goes into this more, and so does the Dirty Genes course. Kendall, how can I tell if a gene is born dirty or if it became dirty? Is it important to make that distinction? 100%. So Kendall, great question. So from the book, you're going to do the quiz and the laundry list that I showed you earlier. And that's going to be informing you that if you score, you check a lot of those boxes, that gene's dirty. Now, was that gene born dirty, or did you make it dirty through your lifestyle, diet, environment, and supplements and meds? When you don't really know. So when you get your StrateGene report and you look at your Dirty Genes pathway and your genetics, and you've inherited let's say the PEMT gene, and there's no variance in there, but you scored like a 9 out of 10 dirt on your PEMT gene, well, that tells you two things. Either there's a genetic variant that StrateGene didn't test for in your PEMT, which is possible because there's a lot of SNPs, and we do not exhaust the ability to look at every single SNP and every single gene. We did our best, but research is looking every single day. So A, there could be a genetic variant that is truly affecting you, and it was born dirty. We just don't report it for various reasons. A, we didn't find it. B, it hasn't been discovered yet. Or C, we tried to include it, but it's so complicated that it's not possible to test for without a whole genome test or some other technology. We can't pick it up. So those are some three things that you need to think about. Plus, it could also be if it was born clean, that's a sign that it got dirty from your choices, right? And then lab findings, when you work with your doctor and you order labs, and we discuss labs in your book for you. So every single gene, we have recommendations for you in terms of supplementation and lifestyle things for every gene in the back of the book. Plus, we also have where are the labs? Right here. So in the Appendix A, we have a whole section on lab testing. So, and then we break it down for you. So we have general lab tests, which we believe that everyone, for the most part, should be considering across the board, because if these labs are out, a lot of genes are going to get dirty. And then we break it down by gene. So for COMT, we provide you direction and your health professional direction, which labs to consider and why, so you can test these real time. So again, that is why having the merriment of the Dirty Genes book with your StrateGene is so useful. So how can StrateGene help you? All right. That's the lovely wife and baby of our videographer, Spencer. So thank you for them for providing that. So StrateGene gives you the first layer of your blueprint, your genetic blueprint of your employees that you've inherited. So your parents created a business for you and you've inherited that business. And now you're going to be taking the reins over and you're meeting your employees for the first time. So here you are. These are all the employees that work in the dopamine department. And look at them all. You got to meet every single one of them. You got to spend some time with them. You got to learn their strengths and weaknesses. You got to learn what they do in your business and how you can support them so they can best perform for you and support the growth of the business and support their coworkers. If one employee is working too slowly, the employee next door to them is going to say, hey, will you hurry up? You're affecting my performance here because you're not making what I need in order to function. So hurry up with those TPS reports so I can get going over here. And well, TPS reports are kind of dirtying your genes, all right? Office Space, that was a great movie. A little inappropriate at times, but great movie. So you need to quickly look and understand at how the susceptibilities you have in each one of these layers. And so in your dopamine pathway, this is a new and expanded pathway in the new StrateGene. You do not have this in the current StrateGene, well, in the original StrateGene. So your dopamine pathway is a lot less complicated, but the new one is way more thorough. So here you're seeing how phenylalanine, how your dopamine is made, how it's eliminated, and how it's transported and bind to receptors, and how it converts to norepi and epi, and how those bind to receptors get transported and get eliminated through the body. So we're showing you three things. And you want to know if your production of dopamine is faster or slower. Okay, so you're seeing that here, part of the picture. And you want to know if the elimination of your dopamine is faster or slower and where the sticky points are for that. So you get that whole picture, the step-by-step approach. And then you want to know how the dopamine gets transported and bound to your receptors. Does that happen faster or slower? And then how it converts to norepi and epi and how those are impacted as well. So when you understand how things work together, you're going to get a bigger picture, because you might be low dopamine because you're processing it, eliminating it out of your body too fast. Or you may be low dopamine because you're not making it fast enough. Or you may be low dopamine because your ability to carry it isn't very good. Or you might be low dopamine because your receptors for dopamine aren't very prevalent or working very well. So if you are blaming all your dopamine on one gene, COMT, right here, I'm all irritable and crazy because I have a slow COMT. Yes, it's a big one. But look, as you can see here, it's not the only one, is it? The major route of dopamine metabolism is through the monoamine oxidase genes, Maui and Maui. And this person has a faster and typical elimination of their dopamine, but their COMT is slower. So, and their ALDH is slower. So when you understand the bigger picture, you don't just focus on your COMT. If you had ordered just a traditional genetic test, they'd have just shown you these genes, COMT, homozygous, variant. And you're like, what does that mean? How do I fix it? Takes, avoid methyl donors, take magnesium. That would have been all you had. Or possibly take SAMe, bad recommendations. Or you found another gene, your tyrosine hydroxylase gene produces L-DOPA quickly. So therefore, reduce your intake of tyrosine because you might be making too much dopamine. That is not the entire picture. But you see my point here. That is what most genetic reports do. They give you one gene, what the consequence is, and how to fix it. And this same health professional who was really overwhelmed from StrateGene, and rightly so, in the beginning, but she calmed way down after I explained it to her. She started making a table. And she started taking a table and summarized all her patient SNPs and what the SNPs were found, what the consequence was, and what nutrients to use to support it, and what lifestyle things to support it. And I quickly told her, she goes, you guys should be making this table for me. Why don't you have a summary table in your StrateGene report? I said, because that is ruining the entire premise of StrateGene. You have to look at how everything interacts with everything, and you can't just table it. It's not appropriate. You need to understand the whole dynamic of everything. And I will get to this later when I explain the dopamine pathway. I'm not going to do it now. I will do it later. So follow up in the next webinars. But I want you to understand here that this key right here is extremely important that you understand that these genes can work slower or faster based upon, key point, based upon the SNPs that we identify. StrateGene does not cover every single SNP out there exhaustively. We've tried, but let me give you an example. I'm going to shoot from the hip here. The MTHFR gene, I'm throwing a really random number out here. Genes are made up of DNA bases, okay? And MTHFR can be, say, 20,000 pieces of DNA bases, right? So there's all these letters, and there's 20,000 letters in your MTHFR gene. Every single one of those letters are important to the makeup of your MTHFR gene. If one of those letters changes, that's a single nucleotide polymorphism. It's a SNP. And most SNPs have no effect on the gene at all. None. Zero. No effect. Some SNPs have an effect. And we tell you what that effect is in the report. It might bind a cofactor wrong. It might increase transcription. It might reduce transcription. It might interact with something else differently. So we give you the understanding of what the variant does, what the consequence is, and ultimately how to support it. Now, there can be 5,000 SNPs in the MTHFR gene, and research is only discussing truly maybe 5 out of all those thousands and thousands and thousands of other SNPs. So understand that we are giving you a snapshot of what is currently known in research and what we've been able to test for. So the second layer, this is what a lot of you are really wanting genetic testing for. You want to identify which genetic variants you have and what supplement you should take. And you also ultimately want to know what dosage you should take and what brand you should take, right? And that can't be possible. You can't do that. If you do that, and if you see that, to me, that's a conflict of interest. That's first of all. Second of all, it is just bad practice. So you cannot just make an assumption that just because there's a SNP in your COMT gene that you need to supplement with something particularly every single day. Because what if you don't have the gene upstream of it, like DDC here? What if you don't have sufficient vitamin, or you have plenty of B6, but you're not consuming enough protein in your diet? So, and tyrosine comes from protein. So here you are, you took a genetic test and you found out that your COMT is slower, you're homozygous here, and it's bad and you have to fix it. And the report says, oh, you must take magnesium the rest of your life and watch out for methyl donors, which is horrible information, by the way, and do all these other things. But that is completely disregarding all the upstream information. They have no idea how your tyrosine hydroxylase gene is working, or your dopamine decarboxylase gene is working, or your phenylene something, PAH gene, I forgot what that stands for, right? You have no idea, or how your biopterin is being synthesized, or your iron levels. They don't know, but they're telling you, they're giving you a baseless recommendation that sells them more supplements, and I call it a supplement mill. And frankly, it pisses me off, and it's bad. And what happens is you've been trained wrongly that if you order a genetic report, you're going to be informed what supplement to take. And that's what you're looking for in StrateGene. And you're going to get pissed off at me. Why did Dr. Lynch make all this, but he's not telling me what supplement to make? I inform you, and my team informs you what nutrients support that particular gene, but we will never tell you how much to take, when to take it, and what supplement to take, because we don't know. That's where you need to work with a health professional. We are showing you the susceptibilities, and we're showing the influences. So these nutrients are extremely important because these nutrients are what drive the enzyme's function. And most of these genes that you see here on StrateGene produce enzymes. So genes get stimulated to produce an enzyme. And when that enzyme is produced, now the enzyme needs to bind cofactors in order for it to function. It's like you having a key to your car. And the key has to be the ignition and turned in order for your car to be on. If the key is sitting in your drawer at home, your car is just sitting there and it's not on. It has to be actually inserted and turned and clicked. So that's how these cofactors are. They have to be inserted into the enzyme, turned and clicked in order for any function to occur. And if you have a genetic variant, that turning and clicking, the cofactor might be there, but the turning and clicking, you might have to jiggle the steering wheel a little bit or do something else to make it happen. And when you know your genetic variant, you know that you have to wiggle the steering wheel a little bit before you give the cofactor or put the key in. And we tell you that information. So dietarily, we give you the recommendations where these nutrients are primarily found. And you can also go to the Linus Pauling website or World Healthiest Food website. There's a plethora of really good websites out there. There's great apps as well that track your nutrient density of your foods. I talk about them in the back of the book too, in the appendix of Dirty Genes.
Hey, Ben, real fast, I thought I'd bring up, we had one person asking a question earlier, if there are other tests that work well along with the StrateGene. And since you're talking about nutrient cofactors and nutrition needs, I would have to say, yes, gosh, goodness, by seeing something like a NutriEval or an Ion 40, some nutrient panel along with the StrateGene, boy, you can answer a lot more questions. So yes, please consider running other tests along with StrateGene.
100%. And that's where working with a health professional is so important. And in StrateGene, well, in Dirty Gene's book, again, we give you that. I'm trying to close my email here. I didn't do that earlier. In the book's Dirty Genes, again, there's that appendix. And we inform you of general labs in the Ion 40, NutriEval, and we actually specify specific lab company names as well for you. We don't just say do organic acids. We give you some recommendations to point you in the right direction, or your health professional in the right direction. So running labs alongside your StrateGene, along with your history, dynamic trio, 100%. So this third layer is something that is extremely beautiful with StrateGene. And that is something that is extremely underappreciated by most users, primarily because I've done a poor job of teaching you all. And so that is why I'm here with you now. because what you're seeing on your StrateGene report, a lot of you order StrateGene because you want to know what variants you have. I get that. Totally get it. That's why I ordered it too. But I also want you to understand the maps, the pathways that you have are of extreme value. Even if you pulled out the SNPs, let's say you have this pathway in front of you of dopamine, norepinepi, and you didn't have any genetic testing, this pathway would still be of huge amounts of value for you. Well, why? If I don't know my variants, why would that be useful? Because you still have the cofactors. The nutrients needed, the SAM and magnesium, the riboflavin, the copper and PQQ and vitamin C and the B6 and the iron, right? So you know how these enzymes are supporting or need support. And then you also have what Elisma is circled here of welding fumes and BPA and paraquat, cocaine, nicotine, Ritalin, Wellbutrin, how these slow down your dopamine reuptake, and how smoking and vitamin C and acute high stress influence the tyrosine hydroxylase gene to work faster, okay? And how high levels of serotonin slow down your MyCOMT gene, regardless of SNPs, and how high homocysteine can slow down MyCOMT gene, regardless of SNPs, how low vitamin D slows down MyCOMT gene, regardless of SNPs. And every single one of these words on here is based upon research. The bibliography of StrateGene alone is over 100 pages long, which we had to submit to the lab to get CLIA verification of our lab report. So StrateGene is CLIA certified, and it has been verified by a third party to be accurate. So extremely important. So you need to know about that too with other genetic tests that you're running. There's a lot to know with genetics, and that's one of the reasons why releasing the new StrateGene genetic test was so delayed in multiple processes, because we would find something that needed more attention and more improvement. But we launched it without all the training, because we knew we can provide you the training as we go, because StrateGene is a lifelong tool. But you have to understand that things can slow down the genes regardless of SNPs or speed them up. And you do not want to always speed them up, and you do not always want to slow them down. It depends. And when does it depend? Well, that's what we're going to get into later at this higher level. I just want to give you the snapshot of that. So do you need to be considering testing for any of these? Absolutely. Do you also need to be sitting down with your doctor and saying, doc, I found out that, I've been taking Wellbutrin or Ritalin, and, I've been feeling a bit off, and I've got this genetic variant here. Actually, it's pretty typical for this person, but if they had a genetic variant which was even slower or faster, they might have to adjust the prescription medication with you. And the doctor does that, not you, but you bring it to their attention. So it's guiding your doctor's treatment recommendations, and it's guiding their laboratory decision making. Which labs should I run? Which nutrients should I evaluate, and so on. So StrateGene is giving them strategic decision making. So here we're talking about labs. The fourth layer. So you've got lab markers. So you can, if you order labs and the doctor knows how to look at these in combination, and Elisma is going to be training a lot of our health professionals, because Elisma is beautiful at creating the whole picture thing. You can't just be ordering labs and say, oh, you're low riboflavin, supplement riboflavin. You can't just do that. You need to be looking at relationships with other nutrients and what's going on with the patient. And she's going to teach them that, and so will I. And so if all these things can be measured in lab findings, isn't that cool? So if you take your StrateGene report to your health professional and you lay this down along with lab findings, environmental findings, food findings, nutrient findings, and SNPs, you see how powerful this is now? And so you can start seeing where these roadblocks are happening. So if you find out that if you have, an infection and you're low vitamin D and your homocysteine is elevated and your red blood cell magnesium is low and your HVA is low, these are all good things to know about. And then you sit down, you assess that along with your symptoms, along with your laundry list quiz answers, and you put it all together. So now do you see that StrateGene is not something you just get back and you're all excited to see the lab finding from StrateGene and try to fix it right away. This is an ongoing tool that we use multiple times throughout your life, countless, 1,000 times in your life. This is not a one and done type of report, okay? When I ordered 23andMe, I looked at that thing and it was like a one and done. I had I'm shooting numbers and nonsense, but if I eat asparagus, my pee stinks. Well, I already knew that. And I tend to baldness, okay? And a certain male pattern baldness. All right, I already knew that too. You likely have brown hair. Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay. You tend to be a sprinter, not a long endurance cross-country runner. I find that wrong. I'm much better at endurance than sprinting. So I disagree with you, 23andMe. And also, I have a 1.3 time reduced risk for prostate cancer, but I have a 2.3 times increased risk of colon cancer. All right. So what do I do about it? So now can I just not worry about my prostate and I'm good? But now I got to freak out about my colon, right? So a lot of this type of stuff, that's kind of a one and done. And you read that information and you freak out and you put it to the side and you kind of shrug your shoulders about the pee stuff and the running stuff. And you're like, all right, it's not useful. StrateGene, different animal. That's why you really can't compare it. So I love what Elizabeth did to this pathway. It illuminates the complexity, which you are. You are a beautifully complex person. If we were able to distill Tom into 4 words, that would discredit all the things that Tom is great for and hasn't even done yet in his life. And if we point out the bad things that Tom does and only focus on the bad stuff, or me or you, that is just reducing the hell out of us as individuals. So look, conventional medicine, the model is extremely reductionistic. You go to the cardiologist if you have a heart problem. You go to the pulmonologist if you have a lung problem. You go to the psych person if you have an emotional problem. You go to the neurologist if you have a brain problem. So, but blood flows everywhere. Everything is connected to everything. Your immune system is everywhere. Your oxygen is everywhere, or it should be. Your nutrients flow everywhere. So you got to look at the holistic view. And StrateGene does that. And so if you reduce your genetic testing to SNPs and only SNPs, you've just joined the reductionist party and you're failing yourself. And you've ordered StrateGene because you're fed up with the reductionist mentality. You're fed up with the traditional medicine model. It's failing you. And so you're trying to seek answers, but then you're demanding that StrateGene makes things reductionistic. But you do that not because you want it reductionistic. You do that because you want it comprehensible. And I'm with you. I get it. When it's reduced immensely, it's easier to understand and it's less frustrating. But the piano is a complex instrument. Every instrument, granted, is complex. And it's beautiful when it's played right. And you're beautiful when your genes are working right. So it's our job, my job, to provide you the tools that are ultimately complex, that are not patronizing, but my job is to teach you how to play it right. So these are complicated, okay? So you need to know what the genes make, right? Tyrosine hydroxylase makes L-DOPA. That's interesting, isn't it? You hear about L-DOPA and you hear about prescription L-DOPA. And it's norepinephrine's job to help make your epinephrine. Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know norepinephrine can be converted with methylation into epinephrine through this PNMT gene. Oh, and I have a slower ability to do that. That's interesting. Okay. So, right. So it's important. And then these dirty genes, what happens when it comes to the receptor site? So let's say you make all the dopamine in the world and it's in perfect harmony and balance in terms of production and its elimination is balanced. But wow, look at the transport. Dopamine transport in this person is pretty fast, and the dopamine receptors are pretty significant. So they're probably potentially very sensitive to L-DOPA if things are working properly, right? So this is important information to know. So you got to put it all together. And then do you have dirty genes when you're breaking down things? So, COMT can Well, Maui can make some dirty things here. Dopal, if it's red, it's not good. It's something that needs to be eliminated from the body and cleared out. And so if you're supporting your Maui quickly because you found out you have a Maui variant, or you found out you have a slow Maui in your Dirty Genes book, and you supplement riboflavin and you start getting brain fog and fuzzy head, you might have increased your dopal. And because you don't have sufficient thiamine or riboflavin, or your SAMe gene isn't working very well, or your COMT gene isn't working. So you got to support the whole pathway. Okay. And you'll get there. So ultimately, you got to put it all together, and it just keeps going around and around. This wheel never stops. Imagine this wheel as frictionless. Once this sucker starts rolling, it goes forever. This is not a one turn and you're done. This is a wheel in motion, perpetual. Health is a moving target, and it is something that is dynamic, and you're always seeking it. So, you got to just keep going and looking for it, and how to make strategic decisions. So the genetic or blueprint, you order StrateGene because you want to know your strategic genetic blueprint, and you do that, and you have that information. Now, that is just one component of it. Are my certain genes working faster? And if they're working faster, what's that going to do to the next gene in line? What if that next gene in line is working slower? Or what if the first gene is working slower and so is the next one? And so on. And then what if there's no genetic polymorphisms? Well, all right, I ordered a genetic test because I want to know genetic polymorphisms. I get that. But you also need to know how genes make their enzymes in the whole picture, and you need to know what nutrients they need in order to function, and you do lab testing in order to figure that out, and you take supplementation to enhance that. Environmental influences. Look, every single day we breathe 11,000 liters of air every day. 11,000 liters of air every day. So if you're working in an environment that has new carpet and it's sucking the air intake into the building that is full of car exhaust, or you're driving to work every day in traffic, or you work in a downtown that it's right off a busy freeway, you're polluting yourself 11,000 times with every breath. So, it could be dirty genes that are really affecting you, not the genetic blueprint. StrateGene will help you find that too. And then the complete pathway, you're going to understand how genes work together. And then you're going to come up with a system and, support it. And your doctor is going to give you a treatment plan based upon these things. And you're going to be working on that for a month or two, and you're going to come back. And then you're going to look at StrateGene again. And you're going to look at your pathways. You're going to look at genetic blueprint. Then you're going to run labs. You're going to get an update on your lab findings. Oh, well, we got your riboflavin up, but your neurotransmitters are still off here. And it looks like we have some, gut infections that popped up. So now you're going to be looking at some environmental influences, any new exposures. Oh yeah, by the way, my neighbor sprayed some pesticides in our yard. It's been really affecting me. Well, which pesticides were they? You give them the name. The doctor looks up the mechanism of action of how these pesticides are eliminated from the body. And then you look at the whole StrateGene report, and they use StrateGene again and again. Every visit, they're going to use StrateGene. Again, it's not a one and done thing. So StrateGene ultimately is personalized medicine. So it dictates, and not doesn't dictate, it helps inform you and your health professional together to make a better, more refined treatment plan. And if you haven't worked with a health professional yet, there's a lot you can do while you're looking for a health professional who understands this stuff. And I want to warn you right now, not many health professionals get this full picture approach. Why? We weren't taught this in school. I am self-taught in all of this. We got the foundations in med school or nutrition school or acupuncture school or medical school. We got some foundations of all of this stuff, but no one has actually ever put it together like this. I've never seen it. And so when you put it all together, it's pretty overwhelming. But at the same time, once you start doing it, it's extremely empowering, and you start making good decisions. And I love this comment here. StrateGene is an opportunity to learn why you are the way that you are. And yes, you have increased susceptibility, perhaps your whole life, to being pissed off and irritable. But at the same time, you're a type A driven person who gets a lot of stuff done, and you're never, ever, ever depressed. But you grind yourself to a halt. You've been a person who's been extremely sensitive to things. You walk down the aisle at Home Depot And every time you get a headache, you walk into a clothing store with all the new clothes and you start getting headaches and irritable. And you're like, what the heck? Why am I so tired? All those clothes are laden with formaldehyde. You go to the dry cleaners and you pick up your stuff from the dry cleaners. Should be fine, right? You start touching those, you put that shirt on without washing it. It's full of nasty compounds from the dry cleaners. Why am I feeling so bad? You might be born with genes that have reduced ability to get rid of that garbage. So it's good to know your genetics, but it's good to know your environment. I would say it's better to know your environment. So, and it gives you the why behind your health issues.
Here you go, Ben. A couple questions for you. How can I tell if it is a born dirty gene or if it became dirty? Is it important to make that distinction?
I would say it's important to understand the distinction because if you understand that the gene got born dirty, Tom O'Brien had a great example. Let's say you're a mountain climber, and you take this rope up, and you buy a rope, but before you buy that rope, you look to see if there's any frayed areas, and you did a quick cursory look, and it looks good, and you buy it, and then you throw it in your back of your car, and you didn't know that your son took out your car, prior to you going climbing, and they ran over it, and dogs were chewing on it, and then you picked it up, and then you went climbing, and you didn't check, and that rope snapped on you. So when you know your genes have weak points or increased susceptibilities to certain things, maybe they don't bind a cofactor very well, then it's important to know that it's born dirty, because it's very, very important for you to make sure that you have that sufficient cofactor on board. For example, if you are born with a slower MTHFR gene, then I don't really want to call it a born dirty gene, but let's say that, because that's what I wrote in the book, but I don't really like that. Let's say you were born with a slower MTHFR gene. If you know that, then it's, in your mind, after you read the book, that your riboflavin levels have to be on point. You know that you should not be consuming folic acid. I mean, that's just something that you can't do anymore. You heard about it and you thought about it, but now you're diligent about it. You consume it sometimes. We're not perfect. You do eat the occasional folic acid, in processed foods or restaurants or on camping, and it's not going to kill you, but you make, sure you're more diligent a week later to, for a week to really avoid that stuff. And we ebb and flow. That's why they're called dirty genes. They're not perfect genes. They're dirty because you're going to continue dirtying them. So it's important to know your susceptibilities, because I believe it makes you more compliant and more understanding of, say, a policeman pulls you over and you get super anxious and you can't calm down the whole rest of the day. That whole evening, you're staring at the ceiling because you had a significant stressor and you just a type of person that can't calm down. And if you know that you have a slower CMT, slower Maui, and other types of genes that are contributing to this, then you know how to support them. But on the flip side, it's also important to know that if you don't have any SNPs in these particular genes, but you are still having these reactions of slow to calm down, but all these other genes are clean, the CMT, the Maui, they're all born clean, but you still have these symptoms, then you know that something is going on in your life where you're either nutrient deficient, nutrient excess is a problem, folks, or as I discussed in the book with tyrosine and Tasman and his ADHD and CMT chapter, or you've got some environmental exposure or your doctor put you on some medication, right? So it's important to know both sides, got dirty or born dirty. Both are important.
Awesome. How's that for an answer? Okay, so in the dopamine pathway, here's another question. If the DRD2 is fast, does that mean that it eliminates dopamine too fast?
Okay, so here's what I want to caution. Great question, first of all. So this question is referring this particular gene here. Okay, if this particular gene, the DRD2 gene, and we're going to be getting, so I'm going to be covering the dopamine pathway in a separate webinar. So I want to start with that. So these specific gene questions, I want to address in a holistic way, because StrateGene is a holistic approach versus a reductionist approach. We're reducing down to one gene, but I get it because we have the gene in here, so we should reduce it at some point, right? So I'm going to address your question with the understanding that we have to look at these things holistically, not just in one gene at a time. And I will also be going over this in the dopamine pathway webinar in the future, in the near future, by the way, so you get the whole holistic picture. DRD2 gene if you can see here, it's a receptor. It's a dopamine receptor. And if it's working faster, if you click that particular gene, so if you had the actual report and you click this, it would take you to the DRD2 description, and you would learn more about that particular gene and how it gets dirtied and cleaned and so on based upon what we know. But my understanding of a dopamine receptor in the DRD2 gene is if it is working faster, as in this individual here, they're going to have a more significant response to dopamine in the brain. Because you can have all the dopamine you want, but dopamine has to bind to a receptor in order for the effective dopamine to occur. So for Parkinson's, for example, or anyone in general, you can have all the dopamine you want in your brain, tons of it. But if those receptors are not working, you have no effect. Let's look at diabetes, for example. Diabetes type 2, you have a lot of blood sugar in your blood, tons of it, but it stays in your blood. Why? Because the glucose is not binding to the receptor because the receptors have been reduced in number. They've been downregulated. They've been reduced. So the short answer is, if you see a faster DRD2 gene, as in this individual, that is going to tell me that they are going to have a increased response to dopamine, and that could be good and that could be bad. It depends on the situation.
So there's a lot of people wondering, do we have, for those who have the existing 23andMe panels or the old StrateGene panels, are there any options available for them to either transfer or upgrade to the newer StrateGene?
Yes, contact customer service and they'll help you out.
There's a couple of people asking about different types of things that we do not cover right now on the panel. Can you mention how they can search RSID numbers with their results right now? So even though we might not display some certain SNPs on our panels, that they can still access those RSID numbers and search their panel for different genes that they're interested in?
Yeah. So you go to StrateGene.me, okay? So go to your StrateGene.me website, and if you have bought the old StrateGene, there is no raw data for that one, right? You have your raw data from 23andMe or Ancestry, so you have theirs. You don't have ours because you didn't use our genetic chip. What I will inform you now is we have a lot of SNPs in our StrateGene chip that 23andMe does not. Look, I did not want to make our own chip. That was extremely expensive, very time consuming, very hard. But I'm glad we did ultimately. So I find if you are not able to get something that is what I would call great, then we'll make it. So, and so we've made StrateGene for you. So StrateGene has way more SNPs that are relevant to health than 23andMe does, at least based upon our investigation. So I'm going to log in here because I already have an account with StrateGene, and I'm going to, with my wife's permission, show you her area. So I am in. So when you log in, you immediately get to your profiles. Okay, and if somebody shares them with you, you can go to shared profiles. I'm not going to click that because I want to, I have a lot of shared profiles and I don't want to have people's names show up. So, but if I click that, this little down arrow, you click that, you can share profiles with people, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to scroll down to my wife here, Nadia. I'm going to view her report. So you can see here, there's a 122-page report. What you want to do is right away, you want to download it and you want to save it somewhere safe on your computer. And then you can browse it and look at it on your own time. You have to log into the website all the time, okay? Or you can print it if you want to have another book on your hands, 122 pages. So here's your raw data. So you can see the tab on the top here. So it says reports, and it shows raw data, and it shows share. So I'm going to just hit the share real quick. So you need to know the username of your health professional. So if your health professional has an account on StrateGene, so whoever you share it with, they have to have an account on the StrateGene.me website. They can't just be a random person. If you want to share StrateGene with your friend or a doc who does not have a StrateGene.me account, then you have to send it to them I recommend a very secure way. If you share it to them via our website, it's very secure and safe because we designed it that way. So you click the share tab and then you click share and then you type in their username on StrateGene and then you select their profile that you want to share. And so I would say, okay, I want to share my wife's report. I'm going to share it to, I don't know, I'm just like make up name doc. And then I don't want to share just my report. I want to share my raw data to my health professional too. And yes, I've read the sharing policy and I agree, and I click the share button. So that button turns green after that. Okay, so that's important to know. But back to the raw data originally, I tend to answer questions a long way around, but you can type in the specific RSID. So let's see if StrateGene has this particular variant. So we search, and there it is. We do test for it. So you can see here that we do have tests for this particular food2 variant, which is discussed in Snipedia. And you can learn here that the orientation is plus and minus, or plus. You got to know some things here. And GG shows as susceptible of norovirus infections according to their research. And the prevalence in the population of the GG variant is X, Y, and Z down here. And this individual, my wife, she happens to be GG. Okay. So, that is important to know. So did we report the food2 genetic variant here? No, we did not. But you have access to it in the raw data. Now, why didn't we report food2 like we used to on the old StrateGene? Because we broke our rule with the original StrateGene. Let me hold it here for you for a second. So this was the old StrateGene, right? Many of you all still have this. This is a table, and you look what variants you have, and you see the red, you see the yellow, and you go, oh crap, those are broken. How do I fix it? And all these green ones, you take them out of context, and you think they're all fine because you take them all out of context. You take these out of context too. Broke our own rule. Okay. And then the bonus SNPs. Bonus SNPs means there's no pathways involved here. So we reported food2 and BCO1 and TNF alpha and all that, but we took them out of context. There's no pathway. You don't know how the genes are interacting with other genes. So in the future, we will be having pathways for food2. We will be having pathways for BCO1, probably a nutrient pathway, so you can see all your nutrients. So if you get the genetic test for StrateGene, which I wholly recommend you do, then you get this core report, which I've been sharing with you today, but you'll also be having access to future reports, which will be a nominal fee to add those to your repertoire of reports should you want to choose them. So for example, we're coming out with a vitamin D planner, which looks at vitamin D synthesis, transport, elimination, and activation of vitamin D. And I'll tell you, it's extremely interesting. And we have a flurry of SNPs in there too, way more than just VVR. So we're researching all the time. Oh, one more thing about the raw data. You can download it. So there's this link right here, download raw data. So you click that and it will download to your computer. Oh, and here's the education portal, by the way. So you go to education portal and you can scroll down and you can download some various PDFs. Here's the StrateGenes course. As you can see here, all the modules, and then StrateGenes consult, which I look at someone's laundry list. This one I highly, highly recommend you should watch. This one's great. You look at their quiz scores from the laundry list. You see how they scored from one of their Super 7s. Then you look at which genes that they've inherited, which were born dirty or not. And then you also look at lab findings, and then you hear me give some recommendations. Okay. And then you have case studies down here. See, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can slide over. So case studies and some additional training. So you got a lot of stuff in the back end. So you got a lot of resources at your fingertips for $295.
Okay, I got one more question, then we should probably call it. It's getting late for everybody. Is there a difference in the outplay of MTHFR 677 and 1290A? So I'm wondering if they're meaning the strength of having one versus the other.
Well, yeah, I mean, variants, look, I'm going to bring up my wife's report here real quick, again, with her permission. So I'm going to pull up her folate pathway. And, I just want to say something real quick, too, before I move to the MTHFR gene. A lot of people say that, I have the MTHFR gene, and therefore I need to be careful with folic acid. Or you go to your health professional and say, look, you do not have the MTHFR gene variant. It's fine. Therefore, you can take folic acid. Well, are they right? No. Why? Folic acid reduces this gene's ability to work. What does that do? Reduces your absorption of folate into the blood. And what else? Folic acid reduces your ability to bind and transport folic acid or folate into the body. And folic acid also interferes with other areas as well. So you have to understand that if you don't have an MTHFR variant, folic acid is still not useful. So it's really important. And folic acid here is also another problem. So it's upstream of MTHFR. So yes, it's true that you should not be supplementing with folic acid if you have an MTHFR variant, but the opposite is not true. If you do not have an MTHFR variant, it's okay to use folic acid. That's not right. So I just want to state that. So my wife here has a slower MTHFR gene. So let's click that. So you can see I clicked it and it took me right to the description of MTHFR, what its job is. Remember, you have an MTHFR employee in your body. You've never met them until today. Welcome. And then you learn what makes them not perform at their job. And you've learned what helps them succeed at their job. Okay. And it goes on to the next page. And then what do you know specifically about this person in terms of how they work, right? What's their productivity like? And that's a good one. What's their productivity like? And why isn't their productivity very good? Or why is their productivity really good? And so this individual that you've just inherited as in your business as an employee, this reduces their enzyme activity by about 20%. Okay. So, and then we give you the support here. The activity and stability of this enzyme improves by consuming sufficient folate and riboflavin. So you have a known variant, and if we know how it's reduced, the extent of which it's reduced, in this case it's 20%, we also give you the information of how to stabilize it if we can. We do not make up stuff. We're not going to come out here and say, we're not going to share something to make you feel good. We're going to share stuff that's based on research and fact, or science isn't necessarily fact. It's just accepted theory. That's what kind of science is really. And this could change tomorrow if they find out that it was false, right? So science is basically what's accepted. But this has been replicated multiple times. So, but you're right. It does vary depending on how many SNPs you have. And if you have an MTHFR variant at the 677 position or the 1298 position, which my wife has here, then it's important to know that, what effect that has. And they do have different effects.
So everyone, this is super exciting. As you can tell, it's incredibly intelligent, cutting edge, and new, right? So no one has done what Ben has done in providing the speeds and all of the things that induce and influence the different enzyme functions. So it will be like an instrument. There will be time that will have to be put in to understand the report. We're busy trying to train practitioners. Ben and his team has been putting together an incredible amount of educational information to try and train practitioners. So that's in the works right now. We're going to build up a list of people who you can refer to. In the meantime, I hope you can get your own panels and benefit from this genius. So thank you all for joining us today. And thank you so much, Ben, for delivering that incredible webinar.
Awesome. And I want to give a shout out to Elizma and Angela also for doing a tremendous job on the slide prep and the presentation of this. And Claire, Dr. Green, and Angela Archer as well for all the research that we've been diving in for years, and Christian for helping put it all together programmatically and the huge team behind. This is a massive effort of many, many, many people. And it's cool to see it all happen after the original of me just basically drawing a couple of genes on a scrap piece of paper in my office. So come a long way. Thank you.